Hey, greetings gamers, Agent SN, and welcome back to yet again another video. And today's video is going to be, well, a JRPG video. As you know, I love JRPGs, they're my favorite type of game, and there's a lot of great JRPG series out there, some of which I have played, like Final Fantasy, Disgaea, Fire Emblem, Pokemon, the Mario RPGs, Dragon Quest. I've played the Tales of games, and yeah, and Kingdom Hearts, Xenoblade, but unfortunately there's also some ones that I have missed out on, sadly. And there's actually still a lot that I really want to play, and today I'm about to go through those. Well, through 10 of them at least. So yeah, alright, so as always, I'm Agent S, and let's go with number 10. Alright, so number 10 we have the Monster Hunter series. This series they probably know, and now I said recently that on my Nintendo Direct Thoughts video that I tried to get into this series, but had a hard time getting into it. But I feel like that was probably because I was bad at it when I played the demo for Monster Hunter Rise on the Switch. However, that game is getting ported to the PC in January, and it's going to be a demo for it coming next week, so I'm going to try that. Yeah, I'm going to try the demo again, but this time on PC, and I'm going to try the game again, as they look pretty fun. Now, if you don't know already, the Monster Hunter games, they're made by Capcom, they're action RPG games, they focus heavily on quests, and they focus on you playing as a hunter, as the name says, and you hunt down these gigantic monsters. And the series has been around since the PS2 era, and since then it's had multiple sequels and stuff. It's had some on the Wii, some on the 3DS. And it recently had the two most popular ones that helped made the series more popular in the West, with Monster Hunter World on PS4, Xbox One, and PC, and Monster Hunter Rise on the Switch, which is coming to PC soon. And yeah, this is a series that looks pretty fun, and looks pretty big, and really fun, and it'll be nice to hunt down some monsters, or it's alone or online. So yeah, this is a series that I want to try one day. Both on to number 9. Alright, so next up is the Phantasy Star. Next up is the Phantasy Star series. This is a series from Sega, and it's been around for a very, very long time, since the Master System days. So around when Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy came to fruition on the NES, this did that, but on the Master System. And once again, this is a series from Sega. And yeah, it's a turn-based RPG series. I don't know too much about it, but it is something I'm definitely interested in based on what I've seen from it, and I definitely want to try them. Now, the series started off on the Master System, and originally had 4 games. And later on, they did the Universe series. They did the Phantasy Star Portable series, and recently they did the Phantasy Star Online series, which are a series of MMORPGs, which first they did one on the Dreamcast, which later came to GameCube and Xbox, and recently they did Phantasy Star Online 2, which you can play now on Xbox and PC, and Phantasy Star Online 2 also has PS4 and Switch versions, I believe, but I think they're only in Japan right now. The PS4 and Switch versions of Phantasy Star Online 2 are. But yeah, Phantasy Star looks really interesting, and it'll be nice to see what a classic turn-based JRPG will be like from Sega. So yeah, let's move on to number 8. Alright, next up is the Atelier series. This is a series from Gus and Koei Tecmo. Now, I'm pretty sure it started on the PlayStation, maybe Sega Saturn, but I'm pretty sure it started on one of those two. The series never got localized until Atelier Iris on the PlayStation 2. in the 2000s, of course. And the series was pretty niche for a long time, but it's gained more popularity recently with the Atelier games on PS4, Switch, PC, etc. Yeah, and these are the ones I want to try the most. Now, how the games basically play is they usually have a female protagonist who is gathering items basically and to synthesize. As these games focus heavily on alchemy, so you're gonna be finding a lot of items, synthesizing them, and they have turn-based fights. And yeah, as these focus heavily on alchemy, and yeah. This is a series that looks really fun and definitely something that I would love to get into, definitely. And yeah. And each have various different and they have various different arcs with the mysterious series and the secret ones with Rise of 1 and 2, and there's even Atelier Sophie 2 coming in February. So yeah. Alright, so next up is the Golden Sun series. This is a series from Nintendo and Camelot, and it's honestly one of the most forgotten Nintendo IPs. A lot of people want Isaac in Smash, even though he is a not Mika. I'm pretty sure he's an assist trophy. Anyway, though, Golden Sun is a series that looks really interesting. So I would definitely like to try it out, even though it only has a couple of entries. It had 2 on the Game Boy Advance, and it had a third one on the DS. And all 3 of them definitely look really great. I definitely want to try them all eventually. And it's honestly a shame that the series is kind of dead now, as we haven't gotten a new entry in over a decade. As I'd love to see the series come back, since I've never played it before. But one day I definitely will try the series, and they look to have a really interesting story to them. And hopefully we get a new Golden Sun game or a remake of the whole trilogy on the Switch. Let's get into number 6. And next up is another Nintendo RPG series. Alright, so next up is a series that you most likely know. If you're watching this, then this is probably the one that you've probably heard of the most. And this is Earthbound, which is also known as Mother in Japan. It's called Earthbound here and Mother the rest of the world. Now this series has 3 games. First it had Mother, or Earthbound Beginnings, which released in 1989 on the Famicom, but only in Japan, of course, and it never got localized until the Wii U Virtual Console, when it released as Earthbound Beginnings. And then, in 1994 in Japan, we got Mother 2, which was localized as Earthbound in 1995 in the rest of the world. And then, in 2006, we got Mother 3 on the Game Boy Advance. And that was the last game in the series. And unfortunately, we haven't had any more since. And that game hasn't even been localized. Even on the Wii U Virtual Console, Earthbound, the first Earthbound got localized, but Mother 3 did not. But despite it, all 3 games have a very cult following, and many adore them to death. Well, to death. And one day, I definitely want to try them. And now, the basic premise of them is that you play as 4 kids in a sci-fi world, trying to stop a threat from going on or something. Yeah, they look to be really interesting, and hope we get a Mother 3 remake and the first 2 Earthbound games on Switch Online, and hopefully Mother hopefully Mother 4 happens one day, as I love to play this series. Let's move on to number 5. Alright, so our next series is Xenosaga. Now this series is actually made by Monolith Soft, and guess what? This series is actually part of the same, what's part of the same multiverse as Xenoblade, and I'm actually a big Xenoblade fan, so I really want to try Xenosaga, as although I'm a big Xenoblade fan, I've actually never played Xenogears or any of the 3 Xenosaga games before, which is unfortunate because they look really, really cool and definitely something I'm interested in. And these games were released as a trilogy on the PlayStation 2. There's also a predecessor called Xenogears on the PS1, but that's one game, so it doesn't really count for this list. But Xenogears, Xenosaga is 3 games, so it counts. But anyway, the Xenosaga looks really, really fun and really, really interesting, and definitely something really nice. And as someone who's a big Xenoblade fan, and someone who's never played its predecessor before, I would love to check these out. Let's move on to number 4. Alright, so next up is the Suikoden series. This is an RPG series from Konami. Yes, from Konami. Same people from Metal Gear, Castlevania, Bomberman. Yes, that company. They also made a series called Suikoden, which focuses on a bunch of heroes, of course, obviously, and on a quest. Well, and from what I've heard, they've had some they have some really great stories to them, and yeah. And currently the series consists of 5 games. There's Suikoden 1 and 2, and then there's yeah, Suikoden 1 and 2 are on the PlayStation. Then they did Suikoden 3, 4, and 5 on the PlayStation 2. And then they did some spin-offs and then killed the series off, and of course that eventually happened to all Konami series, unfortunately. However, there's going to be a spiritual successor coming out in 2023 called Ayuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. I'm very looking forward to that game, and I'm going to be playing it day 1. And its HD2D style looks to be really interesting. But yeah, Suikoden looks really, really cool, and all the characters in it, and the story, from what I've heard, are really, really interesting, and yeah. And they look like an amazing typical turn-based RPG. But let's go on to number 3. Alright, so next up is the Ys series. This is a series from actually one of the oldest JRPG studios, Nihon Falcom, and they also made a big series that I'm going to talk about next. Anyway, though, Ys is a series that focuses on a hero named on a hero named Adel Kristen, and he and how this game plays is that these games, they're action RPGs, and they play like a normal action RPG, basically. And they have some fast-paced combat to them, and yeah. From what I've seen in these games, the story and combat look really, really interesting, and each of them look to have some really cool plots from what I've seen. And they definitely look very fun, and I've heard that Ys 9 and 8 I've heard that they're some of the best action RPGs from the last few years. This is a series I definitely want to try one day, as all the games in this series just look really, really amazing, and yeah. All 10 games in this series, as currently 9 mainline games, well technically 10 actually, because Ys Origin. Anyway though, and Ada looks like a really amazing protagonist, and I definitely want to try this series, as the combat and story look to be so freaking good. Let's move on to number 2. Speaking of Falcom, what do we have next? Find out. Alright, so number 2 we have the Legend of Heroes Trails series. And now the Trails series is actually, well, the sub-series of Falcom's The Legend of Heroes series, which started out as a spin-off of the Dragon Slayer series. Anyway, though, the Trails series looks absolutely amazing. The combat looks really good with its turn-based system, but the biggest part about it is the story. The story, just from what I've seen, the story looks really, really amazing, and I definitely want to try out these games, even though they're very long, and even though they have a lot of text, and probably more text than any other RPG. That definitely adds to more character development, which from what I've seen, these games have a lot of. Now, these games are actually split up into 4 different arcs. First, there is the Trails in the Sky arc, which has, well, almost in a trilogy, and each follow an interconnected story that continues off of each one. And then after the Trails in the Sky games, then they have the Crossbelt arc, which is 2 games. First, there's Trails from Zero and Trails into Azure. Well, Trails to Azure. Trails from Zero, Trails to Azure. And then we had the Trails of Cold Steel games. We have Trails of Cold Steel 1, Trails of Cold Steel 2, Trails of Cold Steel 3, and Trails of Cold Steel 4. And then after those 2 games, well, after all 3 of those arcs, then there's Trails into Reverie, which is actually an epilogue of the Cold Steel games and the Crossbelt games. And very recently, the newest Trails game came out in Japan, which is called Kuro no Kiseki, as this series is actually called Kiseki in Japan. And now, these games take a very long time to finish, and each game takes several years after their Japanese release to get localized. I mean, it took 2 years after the original releases for all the Cold Steel games to get localized. But yeah, all the Trails games look so good, and they look to have some amazing characters and amazing story to them, and I definitely want to try these. But let's get on to the number 1 pick. Which one do I want to play the most? Find out. But next up is technically 2 series. Let's go. Ah yes, you saw it coming. You've seen me get hyped for this game. Well, for this, you've seen me get hyped before for Shin Megami Tensei 5, and you know what? Megami Tensei is my most wanted JRPG series to get into. This whole franchise is really interesting, and it looks to be some of the most interesting JRPGs ever, and possibly the most interesting. Now the main Shin Megami Tensei games focus on this person who is in a post-apocalyptic Japan that's infested with demons, and they collect these demons and fuse them in turn-based battles to take on other demons, basically. And they focus heavily on dungeon crawling, and from what I've seen, these games have a very strong story and character development from what I've seen. This is a series that looks absolutely amazing, and with a new entry coming in November, I'm definitely going to be picking it up. Now, there's also a spin-off series that's even bigger, and it's kind of separated a little bit from the main games as Persona. Now, the Persona games are actually a lot different from the main Shin Megami Tensei games, as they focus on are set in a high school in modern day Tokyo, and they're basically half high school simulators and half dungeon crawling RPGs, and they focus on summoning these demons called personas, basically. Yeah. But yeah, the whole Megami Tensei series as a whole really interests me more than anything, more than any other game series or RPG series, honestly. So I definitely want to get into this series for sure. And I'm definitely getting Shin Megami Tensei 5. But anyway though, this is it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. See you guys next time. Agent S out.